Good afternoon and welcome to today's press conference. I'm Mia Rabson with the Canadian Press and I will be moderating today. We have with us Alexandre Lévesque, Assistant Deputy Minister for Europe, Arctic, the Middle East, Julie Sunday, Assistant Deputy Minister of Consular, Security and Emergency Management, and from the Department of National Defence, Vice Admiral Bob Ochterlony, who I believe are all going to be giving an opening statement, and then we will take questions, starting in the room with one question and one follow. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function, and I will call on you after we have finished with questions in the room. Go ahead, pleplease.
Merci, Madame la modératrice.
Thank you, moderator.
Bonjour, c'est un plaisir d'être avec vous encore aujourd'hui.
It's a pleasure to be with you today,
By way
members
of
of
an
the press.
update since yesterday, I would like to begin by mentioning that Minister Joly visited Israel earlier today. Her main objective was to meet with partners and get a first-hand assessment of the evolving situation so that Canada can identify areas where support is most needed. The minister heard firsthand about Hamas's brutal terrorist attack on Israel and underlined Canada's steadfast support for Israel and its right to defend itself in accordance with international law. She also discussed the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza and met with Canadians who took Canadian military flights from Israel to Athens. Yesterday, Canada announced that it is providing an initial $10 million in funding for humanitarian assistance, which will help provide food, water, emergency medical assistance, protection services, and other life-saving assistance. As Minister Hussein noted, this initial funding commitment will allow partners to scale up their efforts and provide assistance to people in urgent need. We are aware of reports that Israel has warned citizens in northern Gaza to evacuate within 24 hours. We will continue to monitor the situation closely. The protection of civilians is paramount. En terminant, je tiens à réitérer
To conclude, I would like to reiterate that Canada's embassy in Tel Aviv, as well as our delegation in Ramallah, continue to operate in extremely difficult circumstances to address the needs of Canadians. These missions will be open over the weekend. They will be ready to offer assistance to Canadians in need. I will now turn to my colleague, Julie Sunday, who will provide more details on Canada's current consular response. Thank you, Alexandre.
It's good to be with you again today for this technical briefing. I'll provide some updates on the latest details regarding consular needs, the support being provided, including support for assisted departures. In the last 24 hours, the Emergency Watch and Response Center here in Ottawa responded to nearly 600 inquiries. We have received over 3,300 inquiries since the beginning of the crisis. We had over 80 responders working overnight in our Emergency Watch and Response Center. Our missions on the ground in Tel Aviv and Ramallah continue to provide consular services to Canadians.
Currently, in Israel, over 6,500 Canadians are registered with Global Affairs Registration Service abroad. 485 Canadians in the West Bank and Gaza are registered. Of that number, we are currently assisting over roughly 2,200 Canadians permanent residents and their families.
As was updated yesterday, Global Affairs Canada is aware of the deaths of 3 Canadians. We also continue to follow up on the cases of 4 other missing Canadians. Yesterday's assisted departures were conducted smoothly, and the 2 Canadian Armed Forces flights were able to assist the departures of 236 people from Israel. I can confirm that 2 additional Canadian Armed Forces flights are taking place today. The first flight included 135 passengers and left Tel Aviv Ben Gurion Airport at 3 p.m. local time and arrived at 5 p.m. in Athens. The second CAF flight included 125 passengers. It departed at 7 p.m. local time and is expected to arrive at 9 p.m. in Athens. We are continuing to work out the details for the upcoming CAF flights to take place tomorrow, and are taking into consideration those who observe Shabbat and ensuring they are on subsequent flights. We remain in direct contact with potential passengers to ensure they are travel ready and to prepare manifests. For those wishing to return to Canada from Athens, there has been good uptake of the Air Canada option for onward travel, and we'll continue to monitor this need and help to facilitate all departure options. Let me now address assisted departures from the Palestinian territories. For the Gaza Strip, the situation remains very difficult. We are aware of reports that the IDF has now warned people in northern Gaza, north of Wadi Gaza, and the UN to evacuate to southern Gaza within 24 hours. This is resulting in a displacement into southern Gaza of over 1 million people. We are also facing increasing challenges of communicating with Canadians in the Gaza Strip, given that electricity is down and telecoms are affected. We learned this morning that there may be an opportunity for individuals to leave through the Rafah gate into Egypt tomorrow between 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. We are actively engaging with Egyptian and Israeli authorities to ensure that Canadians, permanent residents, and their family members will be able to leave. We're working incredibly hard to connect with our allies and the UN to be able to support this departure. Our mission in Cairo is working with Egyptian authorities to ensure these Canadians can then be transported to Cairo so that they can return to Canada. For assisted departure options from the West Bank, we continue to develop ground transportation options to Jordan and are consulting local authorities so that we can transport people by bus. Our mission in Jordan is preparing to support this movement across the border. We are in touch with interested Canadians in the West Bank to help them prepare, and we will be sharing further details in the next few days. Earlier today, we updated our travel advice for Jordan as a result of calls for large-scale protests on the Dead Sea Highway and surrounding areas, and in other parts of the country, including in Amman. We are advising Canadians in the area to exercise caution, expect heightened security measures, avoid all demonstrations and gatherings, and to follow the instructions of local authorities. The situation in Lebanon continues to be volatile and unpredictable. We are watching closely and are well aware of the large number of Canadian citizens and permanent residents in Lebanon. Over the past days, we have updated the travel advisory to advise Canadians to avoid all non-essential travel to Lebanon. And we have directly informed the registered Canadians in Lebanon of this change. Yesterday, we further updated our advice to advise Canadians to not travel any further south than the Litani River due to violent clashes along the border with Israel. I cannot emphasize enough that this is our best advice to Canadians, and in order to limit the risks to travelers, we encourage them to take this very seriously. Thank you, and I'll be pleased to answer questions. I'll hand it over to Vice Admiral Octroloni.
Merci, Julie. Je suis le chef d'état-major, le chef des opérations des forces armées canadiennes.
The Chief of Defense Staff of the Canadian
une brève mise à jour
Assault,
sur nos opérations.
Canadian Armed Forces
Yesterday,
will provide a
12
brief
October, two
update.
Canadian Armed Forces flights transported, as Julie noted, 236 passengers from Ben Gurion Airport into Athens, Greece. Today, we expect similar numbers. Canadian Armed Forces has two planned flights, which will also include the transportation of approximately 30 Israeli citizens returning to Tel Aviv at the request of the State of Israel. Today's first flight left Athens just after noon with 19 Israeli passengers on board, plus a contingent of 5 personnel from Global Affairs Canada, and arrived in Tel Aviv. That first flight has since departed Israel and is with approximately 135 passengers and has just landed in Athens in the past hour. The second flight departed Athens in the afternoon, local, with 9 Israeli passengers, and has arrived in Israel this afternoon. And that second flight is either just departing or has just departed in Ben Gurion as we speak, with approximately 125 personnel on board. The Canadian Armed Forces footprint, as I noted yesterday, is about 59 Canadian Armed Forces personnel currently supporting this mission, including the Air Task Force, including crew and the medical teams, as well as I have a Joint Task Force headquarters, including liaison officers both in Athens as well as in Cyprus. In the coming days, as noted by Julie, we anticipate 2 daily flights by our CC-150 Airbus detachment. However, as I've said in the past, this could rapidly surge or curtail as the situation changes, and we're going to respond to global affairs requirements. Thanks, Julie.
Okay, we'll start with questions in the room. One question and one follow. I remind you, if you are on Zoom, to please use the raise hand function. I will come to you when we're finished in the room. We'll start with Dylan Robertson from the Canadian Press.
Thank you for being here and for giving us these briefings. And on record, it helps us to do our job, so thank you. My first question is just about the Canadians in Gaza, the numbers that we're looking at in terms of citizens, PRs, foreign relatives, as well as the communication that you have to Canadians within Gaza. You'd mentioned the advisory to go south, and I'm just wondering if that's what Canadian officials are also asking Canadians to do?
Thanks for the question. So, yeah, we're working very hard to support people in Gaza. It is an incredibly difficult situation there right now. We are working to update our travel advice to provide additional information. But I've said specifically today what our advice will be. In terms of numbers, we're looking at about 150 individuals total. In Gaza right now who have identified themselves as requiring assistance. The majority of these people are Canadians, but there are mixed families, and that will create additional sort of requirements in terms of ensuring everybody has documentation and is able to transit. I can also say I spoke with our ambassador in David De Silva in Ramallah this morning. The mission has reached out directly and called as many of these individuals as possible over the last 24 hours. We know this has been a terrible week for Canadians in Gaza. Many have had to move because of issues, structural damage, etc., on buildings. We are reassuring them that we're working really closely with our allies and with the UN to be able to ensure that all of the right documentation is in place to be able to leave. So we are also being realistic, which is that we are going to have a very short period of time to notify people when that opportunity arises. So we will continue to work to support their exit in a very volatile and fast-moving situation on the ground. Thanks.
Thank you. And my follow-up is just about the demand for flights. Yesterday, someone had mentioned a bump up in demand over 24 hours. I guess I'm just wondering if that's stabilized, if it's increased, or if that's actually gone down to the still high baseline that we had 2 days ago.
Yeah, so it's still going up in terms of the demand for flights, but what we're finding, though, is that people are finding other routes out. I recognize we gave you higher numbers yesterday. We had a number of no-shows at the airport, and our assessment is that individuals have found alternate routes out and are trying to get out as quickly as possible. But right now I have close to 1,300 individuals in Israel who are seeking assistance.
Thanks. Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star.
Actually, I might have just clarified that. So when you said earlier about 2,200 Canadians seeking help or have asked for help of the registered folks, they're not all seeking flights, is what you're saying. 1,300 are seeking flights. Is that right?
So when I'm saying 2,000 Canadians who are seeking, 2,200 Canadians who are seeking our assistance, in Israel, I'm saying there's 1,300 of those 2,200. In Gaza, I've said there's a further 150. In the West Bank, we're looking at 190 individuals. And then we have almost 600 people whose location is not clear to us, and we're reaching out to try to confirm that because it wasn't provided when they registered.
Right, but are they asking, those 600 who you don't know where they are they asking for help to fly out or documents or like, I guess what I'm trying to understand
They're asking for the most part for help flying out, but But again, people's situations change, and they may have been on our list from 3 days ago and found another route out. So we're validating that list. So last night, for example, the Emergency Watch Center made 1,000 calls. We keep adjusting our numbers, taking people off the list, adding other people to the list. So it is very much in motion. We also had an additional 600 people reach out to us last night and add themselves to the list. So the numbers are constantly in flux.
Can you elaborate on the kinds of conversations and meetings the minister has had today in Israel? Who's she met with, who's she talked to, and also what conversations, if any, or what information, if any, you can share on whether any of the 4 missing Canadians are indeed hostages. Secretary Blinken today said that the U.S. is working on American hostage release in Gaza. Is the Canadian minister doing that?
Maybe I'll take the first
Yeah.
part of the question on the minister's very short trip to Israel and her interactions. So she spent only a few hours on the ground in Israel, arrived early afternoon, Tel Aviv time a few hours ago. She had an opportunity to meet with Canadians departing for Athens, but after that had a bilateral meeting with her counterpart, Foreign Minister Cohen. As I've said in my opening remarks, the primary purpose was really to get firsthand account, and it was a very personal way and human way of looking at the impact of the crisis, of the attacks. Minister Cohen shared some video and photographic evidence of the massacres perpetrated by Hamas, and then of course they had a conversation about Canadians in West Bank, and Minister Joly asked for assistance in facilitating their departure, which her counterpart said Israel would do what they could to assist. And they, of course, talked about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and the minister conveyed the government's expectation that that civilians be protected and that all measures be taken to help them. She has since left Israel. She landed about 20-30 minutes ago in Amman, Jordan.
Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News.
Thanks very much. Hi, I was wondering if just on this evacuation through Egypt, how cooperative is the Egyptian government being on this? Because they have said they don't want Palestinians to get into Egypt. And also, are you talking to Israel about it to get their cooperation to have this evacuation window tomorrow?
So any evacuation into Egypt requires the cooperation of both Egypt and Israel. And so we are engaged. So our representative of Canada and Ramallah, who I mentioned earlier, is engaged with Israel in terms of ensuring that we have green lights for the Canadians departing and their family members. And we are also working with Egypt to ensure that they also have that. So our mission in Cairo is busy doing that. Again, there's a lot of information. It's changing continuously. But right now we're just very focused on having a window potentially tomorrow. That could change. But working really in earnest to take advantage of it if it does arise.
Thanks. And Hamas is claiming that 13 hostages have died, including foreigners. Do you have any sense of whether there could be Canadians among them?
I can't comment on any of those cases. As I mentioned earlier, we have 3 deaths of Canadians that we have noted, but beyond that, I don't have any additional information.
Kyle Duggan, Politico.
Hi, I have a couple of questions about the flights. Are you working with other countries in terms of filling these planes with people from countries that are also trying to get their citizens out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we always We always collaborate, cooperate with our partners. We have a daily call with our Five Eyes partners right now to look at what everyone's doing and where there might be options to support each other. We also, of course, have a much broader group, and this was a group that we worked very effectively with in the evacuation in Sudan, where we had lots of Canadians leaving on European flights and lots of Americans and others leaving on Canadian flights. So our objective is to ensure that we're supporting each other where we can. Right now, though, for our flights, the focus is predominantly on Canadians, permanent residents, and their family members.
In the future, they need to you need to fill space on the flights. Is that something that you're considering?
Where we're not taking a seat from a Canadian, of course we will consider supporting our allies in their efforts as well.
And I just wanted to know a little bit of clarity around what people who are being evacuated are on the hook for. So I understand that they are coming back to Canada at their own expense through the Air Canada flights, but are there other fees that they might face, consular fees or anything like that? Are there anything that needs to be waived?
To my knowledge, there's no fees that would need to be waived. As we're saying, CAF and the Government of Canada is covering the evacuation flight to Athens. We are helping people secure hotels, etc. But onward travel and is at the expense of the Canadians.
Steve Chase, Globe and Mail.
Hi. What concerns does the Canadian government have about the evacuation order that Israel has issued to residents of northern Gaza?
We're very concerned about the well-being of civilians in Gaza, as I mentioned earlier. And that's why in the government's communication with the government of Israel, we have conveyed this and conveyed our expectations that civilian populations be protected.
My second question is the Rafah border crossing. Just to sort of sum up, are you telling Canadians in Gaza to be ready to cross the Rafah border crossing tomorrow between 12 and 5?
We will be making Canadians aware that there is a possibility, but we are not going to tell Canadians to move until we know that that is a possibility and we have confirmation that these individuals can get across that border. The last thing we want is Canadians getting stuck at a border. That border, there are a number of security challenges at all the borders into Gaza. We know that there have been bombs at both borders in the last week. So just to flag, we will provide that information. It will likely be very short notice, and we will be reaching out to people who are fully approved to cross that border.
Tom Perry, CBC News.
Yeah, on that, are you working with other countries on this? Is it specifically Canadians who can get out? Is it other nationalities who can come out? Like, what kind of work is going into that?
So, absolutely. I mean, there are many other countries with nationals in Gaza. We are all engaged. We are working in collaboration with the UN, with the Egyptian authorities. So everybody is working on this. Yeah, it will not just be Canadians. That said, we were very pleased today that the minister was able to meet with Foreign Minister Cohen and get reassurances that there would be assistance and attention to Canadians who are seeking to depart.
At this point, though, I mean, what assurances do you have? Because it still sounds fairly tentative.
100% it is very tentative, yeah. Until we know for certain that border is open during those hours and that we know who is approved to move across, there is a lot of uncertainty around this, yes.
Don't mean to, but who've you gotten assurances from? I mean, what can you tell us about? Like, what are you hearing?
Excellent.
community.
So are you referring to
Well,
which?
if you're getting assurances from somebody that this gate is going to be open between 12 and 5, who's telling you that? Who are you getting assurances from that this is even a possibility?
Are we talking about Gaza or about the West
Gaza.
Bank? About
Gaza.
Gaza. This is communication that has been conveyed to our embassy in Cairo from the Egyptian government in coordination with the Israeli government.
We're going to go online now. Melanie Marquis, if you want to unmute yourself.
Pardon. Je me posais une question par rapport aux critères d'accès.
Interpretation will not be provided for the current speaker because an appropriate microphone is not being used. Interpretation will resume as soon as an appropriate microphone is
Une
used.
femme dont le mari est israélien, dont le premier enfant a une citoyenneté canadienne et israélienne, mais dont le deuxième enfant a seulement une citoyenneté israélienne. Est-ce que cette famille-là aurait dû être acceptée à bord d'un vol parce qu'on leur a dit qu'ils ne pouvaient pas, qu'ils ne remplissaient pas les critères? Est-ce que c'est normal?
Je pense que j'ai bien compris la question. Si
I
on
think
a
I
une
understood
famille
that.
où il y a
If there is a
peut-être une
family
femme ou un mari qui ne soit pas
where, say,
canadien,
one
et l'époux
spouse
est
is
canadien, bien sûr, ils
not
auraient l'accès
Canadian and
au
the other
vol
is, they will
avec
have
leurs
access
enfants.
to
Puis on
flights with
travaille
their
étroitement
children.
avec les affaires
We are working
mondiales
closely
pour être bien certaine
with,
que tout le monde a tout ce qu'il
in
faut
global affairs to ensure that everyone has all
tout ce
they
qui concerne les
need
documents.
regarding documentation.
OK, mais ce que je vous dis, c'est que cette
Interpretation will not
famille-là,
be
donc,
provided for the current speaker because an
mari
appropriate microphone is not being
israélien,
used.
le plus jeune
Interpretation
enfant
will
a juste
resume
la
as soon as an appropriate
citoyenneté
microphone
israélienne,
is
mais la femme est
used.
canadienne. Est-ce que c'est normal que ça a été refusé? On leur a dit ce matin qu'ils ne pouvaient pas monter.
La femme est canadienne,
If
elle a
the wife
accès
is
au vol
Canadian,
avec
she will
ses
have
enfants
access
et
to
son
flights
époux.
with her children and with her husband.
OK, ben c'est pas arrivé. Ben, on lui a refusé l'accès.
Interpretation will not be provided once again.
Philippe Bonneville from Cogeco.
Bonjour à tous, vous m'entendez bien? Oui, donc pour le bénéfice des auditeurs en français, peut-être nous réexpliquer un peu pour qu'on puisse bien comprendre qu'est-ce qu'il y a comme
Interpretation will not be
possibilité
provided for the
demain
current speaker
à
because
la
an appropriate
frontière
microphone is not being
égyptienne.
used.
À quel moment vous allez savoir qu'est-ce qui peut se passer, la fenêtre de possibilité pour que des Canadiens puissent peut-être éventuellement passer du côté égyptien?
Alors, on est encore en train
We are still
d'attendre
in the process
pour des assurances
waiting on
qu'il y aura,
assurances
l'opportunité
that there will be an
traverser
opportunity
cette barrière
to
demain.
cross the border
On n'a
tomorrow.
pas cette assurance. On a
We have
seulement
not received said assurances.
fenêtre qui a été nommée pour nous
We have heard about
comme
a tentative
possibilité.
window
Alors,
indicated
nous
to
sommes en
us
train
as a possibility.
de
We are
contacter les
currently
Canadiens,
working on
de voir
contacting Canadians
s'il y a des familles qui ont
to
besoin
see if there are any
d'autres
families who might need additional
pour les
documentation
non-Canadiens.
for non-Canadian
pour qu'ils puissent,
family members.
Avoir l'occasion
so that they may have the opportunity
demain,
to leave tomorrow
s'ils veulent partir.
should they wish to do so.
Et quelle information dispose actuellement
Interpretation will not be
les
provided because an
Canadiens
appropriate
qui sont à
microphone is not
Gaza?
being
Est-ce
used.
que vous leur avez dit qu'il y a une possibilité déjà pour demain ou ils ne sont pas au courant pour l'instant? Qu'est-ce qu'ils savent dans le processus jusqu'à maintenant?
Alors, nous avons reçu cette information
So we
il y a
received
seulement
that information just
quelques heures.
a few hours ago.
Alors, nous sommes en train d'avancer, de
We are in
téléphoner
the
tout le
process
monde.
of calling everyone and forwarding the
Je
information.
vous assure que nous avons déjà été en contact
I can
avec
assure you that we already have been
la
in
plupart de
contact
ces personnes.
with most of the individuals in question.
Notre mission à Ramallah,
Our mission in
ils ont
Ramallah
fait des appels les
has
dernières
reached out to them
24 heures
by phone over the last 24 hours
pour qu'ils puissent établir le contact
so that
avec tout le monde.
they may establish lines of communication with everyone on the ground.
Ils ont aussi mentionné que bon, ça va s'il y a une opportunité, ça va arriver très rapidement et tout le monde doit être
come at
prêt.
very short notice and that
Alors,
everyone must be
tout le
ready.
monde sait que
So,
la situation est très
everyone knows
complexe.
that the situation
Il
is
y
a
a beaucoup
complex one.
de changement tout le temps.
There is constant change.
Et nous sommes nous sommes en contact avec eux.
And so we are in touch with everyone.
Tandis que nous connaissons que la situation
Even while at the same
est
time we
difficile
recognize
à
that the
Gaza.
situation in Gaza is very difficult.
Annie Bergeron-Oliver from CTV News.
Hi, you were mentioning that some of these flights had Israelis who were coming back to Israel. I'm wondering if those were reservists, if there's any information you can provide about the individuals who came, I assume, from Athens to Israel, and the numbers again, please.
Hey, thanks, Annie. And just as I said, this was a request from the State of Israel. So we had flights going inbound today and meeting the request from the State of Israel through Global Affairs Canada. We've had approximately 30 Israelis heading back. I don't have the details, the information on who they were, but it was a request from the State of Israel, which we got through the Global Affairs Canada. We certainly actioned that. So we had 19 on the first flight inbound and 9 Israelis in the second flight returning to Tel Aviv from Athens.
Thank you very much. And just as a follow-up, just to confirm, when you're talking about a potential exit tomorrow through Gaza, are we talking about an opening of a humanitarian corridor that the United Nations has been calling for? I haven't heard anyone specifically use the word humanitarian corridor.
Humanitarian corridor can have different meanings. Typically, it refers to an opening where hostilities are put aside to allow for the transport of humanitarian equipment and goods, sometimes for the evacuation of personnel. This is really, this has been qualified as a window, an opening during which specifically foreign nationals could be evacuated from Gaza through the southern gates.
Catherine Morrison from the Ottawa Citizen.
Thanks so much for your time today. I'm just wondering if the government is in the process or planning to recruit volunteers from the Foreign Service posted in any other areas to help with evacuations.
Yeah, so it's a big effort across our network, and as I mentioned, I mean, so for starters, in Ottawa, we had over 80 people yesterday evening and overnight. These are people, in addition to my standard team who have day jobs and who are working overnight around the clock right now to help bolster our resources. So we have really surged our capacity here in Ottawa. We also are moving individuals from our standing rapid deployment team. So these are highly trained individuals. They're in missions across the world. And we pull them and mobilize them into action when we have crises like this. So we've sent 15 to Amman, to Tel Aviv, to Athens, and they are bolstering our mission capacity in those places. And we will keep surging people in as required to bolster our resources and ensure the evacuation goes smoothly in terms of our operations. So I would say, it's been a really effective mobilization of our network across Europe and here in Ottawa. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And just as a follow-up, I'm just wondering if you've had any challenges with communication reaching the missions, and if you have any concerns about that in the future.
In what way?
Sorry, just with
to clarify.
Just interruptions. I'm wondering if you've had any issues just reaching or communicating with the missions.
Thank you. No, so far we have not had any problems in communicating with our missions in the region. The lines and means of communication we've been using have been reliable.
Great, thank you.
We'll go to Sandrine Vieira from Le Devoir.
Oui, bonjour. Si vous avez l'assurance que ce sera possible de traverser de même vers la frontière égyptienne, quelle sera la consigne envoyée aux Canadiens à Gaza? Est-ce qu'il faut, je comprends qu'il faut être prêt à réagir rapidement, mais concrètement, à quoi est-ce qu'ils peuvent s'attendre comme consigne, surtout si on parle de délais très serrés?
Alors, nous allons donner des conseils
We will provide
dès qu'on a
advice
l'information.
as soon as we have information available to us.
On sait que oui, ça peut
We
être
do know
difficile
that it might
avec
be
la
difficult
situation, avec
given the current
l'électricité,
situation,
etc.
given the situation with
C'est
electricity
pourquoi
and so on and so
nous
forth.
avons fait
This
des
is why
appels
we have made
pour
phone
que
calls
tout le monde connaisse le contexte.
so that everyone may be
Et puis,
informed of the
alors,
context.
nous allons essayer, avec tous nos moyens de communication,
With all the means of
de leur
communication available
aviser.
to us, we will
Alors,
endeavor to
c'est-à-dire,
properly advise citizens.
nos avis de voyage, et puis aussi
We updated
avec
our travel
un
advice.
contact direct entre nous
And
et ces,
we also
et
have
ces gens
direct
à
contact
Gaza.
with people in Gaza.
Simplement que
I would just like
ce
to
ne sont
add
pas tant
onto
des
that
assurances qui ont été fournies, mais une
it's
fenêtre
not so
qui a
much that we
été
have a
identifiée de
guarantee,
façon
it's that
préliminaire. Les
there
détails
was a
doivent
tentative
encore
identification
nous
of a
parvenir.
window.
Ce que
We
nous
are
faisons
still
en
waiting on
attendant,
details.
pour réitérer ce qu'a dit ma collègue, c'est de
In the meantime,
tout faire pour communiquer
we are
avec
doing all we
les
can to
citoyens
communicate with
canadiens pour qu'ils soient
Canadian citizens
prépositionnés
so that
au
they
cas où
might
cette fenêtre se
be well
matérialise.
positioned if the window does in fact open.
Et si cette fenêtre se matérialise là, et que pour quelconque raison des Canadiens manquent l'opportunité, êtes-vous confiant qu'il y en aura une autre?
On ne peut offrir aucune certitude en ce moment.
We cannot provide any
La
certainty
situation à
on that
Gaza
front.
est
The
extrêmement
situation in
volatile.
Gaza is extremely
Donc on va
volatile.
maximiser
As such,
chaque fenêtre qui est offerte
we will take full advantage of
pour
any
l'extraction, pour
window
l'évacuation, pardon, des Canadiens.
that is opened and could allow for the evacuation of
Marika
Canadians.
Walsh from the Globe and Mail.
Hi there. Thanks for taking our questions. Can you please clarify how Canadians can get on lists and how the government will avoid a repeat of the scenes in Kabul if we're talking about one gate opening and 1 million people displaced?
So, of course, there's different ways to contact us. Our first bit of advice is for everyone to register on the list of registration of Canadians abroad, because then they'll get messages from us as things change, as the travel advice changes, etc. They can call us at the Emergency Watch and Response Center. Our phone number is on the website. They can email us at sos@international.gc.ca. And they can request our assistance. Everyone the number of individuals, as I mentioned, who have requested our assistance across Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza over this past week is now at 2,200, as I mentioned. And assistance, the request for assistance right now is for assistance departing. But as this isn't all people are requesting. They're also sometimes requesting travel documents or other types of assistance. Sometimes it's just for information. But we are accessible, and we have people working around the clock to be able to talk to people and answer these questions.
Okay, sorry. Just to clarify, I don't think that addressed my question about the safety at the Rafah border crossing. And as part of that first question, can you please specify if Canadians in Gaza have already contacted you, should they expect they're already on the list to cross the border? And then I have a follow-up question on the missing Canadians. Can you please provide any more details on whether they are confirmed to be alive and missing, or whether it's unclear if they have been killed and not yet found? And where are they from? Are they all people who live in Canada and were visiting Israel? Any more specificity there?
Okay, so in terms of the 150 people we're focused on who have directly requested our assistance in Gaza, we are in contact with them to be able to validate their papers, et cetera, if they have non-Canadian family members. And yes, we are proactively working to get approval for them to be able to cross borders should the opportunity arise. So we're very much actioning that right now so that we're ready and that we do not miss the window, when it's open. On the second issue of the missing individuals, so we know there's Canadian citizens missing. We're in contact with their families. I can't comment on or speculate on whether any of these individuals are deceased or are missing. We are right now, if we are treating this as a missing persons case, it's because we have no evidence that they are deceased. And so we are very much working to find these individuals.
Do we have, do we have a few more minutes to come back to the room for questions? Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I just want some clarity. I'm not really clear on the whole sort of process around tomorrow and if this gate opens. What assurances you have? You say the Egypt government has assured the Canadian ministry in Cairo that they're willing to let it be open between 12 and 5 and Canadians can pass through that. And you have some assurances from Eli Cohen about both Gaza and West Bank departures of Canadian citizens, or just West Bank? Like, I'm confused about what exactly is clear to you from both those governments.
Let me try to clarify. Thank you for this. So in the conversation between Ministers Cohen and Joly, Minister Joly made the explicit request that Canadians be assisted, Canadians living in the West Bank, be assisted in a land border evacuation on their way to Jordan, and that is the portion that her counterpart said the government of Israel would be willing to assist with. Gaza is a different situation, and again, there are no strict assurances per se. This is a very volatile, very dangerous situation. It is a very dangerous border crossing point. There are actually two crossing points. There is one coming out of Gaza and another one entering Egypt, and a bit of a 100-meter or so zone between the two. So what we know and what we have been advised of by the Egyptian government, not just Canada, other embassies based in Cairo, is that an opening was being created. This is between humanitarian agencies, the government of Israel, and the government of Egypt, in order to facilitate the evacuation of foreign nationals out of Gaza. This situation, like I said, is volatile, could change at any point, so there's no hard guarantees about this. But what we have been wanting to do is make sure that we are prepared should that window materialize.
So there's no guarantee from the government of Israel that foreign nationals can leave Gaza?
Like I said, it's a fluid situation. This is being discussed right now. We were told a few hours ago that this was being considered. We know that the government of Israel and government of Egypt have discussed this, so that's the current plan as we understand it.
Right, but just to clarify, right now, even though it's fluid, you don't have any assurance from Israel that any foreign nationals can leave Gaza.
So Minister Joly raised this today, and there was a commitment from Ambassador Cohen that Canadians would be supported to leave the Palestinian territories. Foreign Minister Cohen, yeah.
Dylan Robertson, Canadian Press.
Hi there. Seeking an update on the hostage team that we've sent. If you could just provide any information on their activities, who they've been in touch with, and how many Canadian officials we're talking about.
So in terms of the team, I mean, they're there. They are engaged on the ground, and as I mentioned yesterday, the important piece is to be able to be in touch with authorities in Israel, to be connected into the U.S. team and other Five Eye partners and other countries who may be missing people also, and to benefit from that conversation. So we have, a number of individuals. I'm not going to be specific, but we are getting the information we need. We're pleased to be there because it is allowing us to have an in-depth discussion and to leave no stone unturned in terms of trying to access and recover, trying to find out where these people are and to bring them back safely to Canada.
And just a bit of a vague question for you, Ms. Sunday. I'm just curious, what is the top difficulty right now? I think you've touched on a few in today's briefing. I think before there's been references to the quality of information that gets collected. I think it's a volatile situation. I'm just wondering if you could walk through the top difficulty or difficulties right now.
Related to the missing persons issue or?
The evacuation.
More generally, my broad remit. I think it's very challenging. We're watching the situation change, hour by hour, minute by minute. We are really pleased that we're having the right discussions. It was excellent that Minister Joly was able to go and to have those discussions in place to help ensure that Canadian issues are being raised in the context of this crisis. We, of course, are working as quickly as possible to help as many people as possible. And so I'm incredibly, honestly, feeling very good about the level of support, from our international partners here, the level of enthusiasm. I can't tell you, these are really dedicated public servants who are working around the clock right now to help on all lines of action here. This includes Israel, it includes Gaza Strip and the West Bank. It includes also making sure we are giving good information in the surrounding areas like Lebanon and Jordan. We are, very, very much engaged, and we are trying to the best of our abilities to give the most accurate information to Canadians. Because while we work to help them, we also need them to, for example, look at our travel advice. This is an incredible service to Canadians. We work really hard to provide really good, accurate travel advice that's very regionally specific so that Canadians can make, informed decisions about where they're traveling and how they're responding, because we want to ensure, again, our ultimate objective is the safety and security of Canadians traveling abroad. So that would sort of sum up where we're at.
Steve Chase, Globe Mail.
Yes. My question is for Vice Admiral Occoloni. I think we have 4 challengers, unless I'm mistaken. Why wasn't Melanie Joly able to take a military plane from Ottawa to Athens or Israel? Was there a challenger malfunction?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Actually, I'm unaware. The fact is that those rates are rated through Global Affairs Canada in terms of that. And as I said earlier, the first flight in today had 19 Israelis on board, as well as a team of 5 from Global Affairs Canada. That was the Airbus going from Athens into Tel Aviv this morning.
I would simply say, as an answer to the question, that it wasn't necessary because she was able to go in through commercial means to Athens and then take a CAF flight over from Athens to Tel Aviv.
Okay, my follow-up question is about the people who need to give approval for foreigners to leave Gaza. You've talked about various players, but I didn't hear you mention Hamas. Maybe I missed that. The Israeli government told us that Hamas has been preventing foreigners from leaving Gaza. That's the one element I didn't hear mentioned here. Is there any indication Hamas is willing to let foreigners leave Gaza through the Rafah gate tomorrow?
Well, obviously, the Canadian government does not interact with Hamas. It is a terrorist organization enlisted in our criminal code, so we do not engage with them. So we don't have any specific information on the fact that Hamas would prevent people from moving. We've heard that there's been communication by Hamas in Gaza discouraging people from moving around and keeping their position. We've not seen any report at this point that they were physically refraining people from moving about.
Rafi Butchikanian, CBC.
I was just wondering about how you are communicating with Canadians on the ground, given the difficulties you said you are experiencing. We've heard at least from one Canadian who says they've tried emailing, they've tried WhatsApping, and all they're receiving are automated responses, which are not helpful to them at this time.
So what I would ask in that case, one is to ensure, if someone emails us, they get a sort of rote response, and that email asks them for specific information. So my advice here is, one, send us an email with all of your very, very specific information. Two, call the Emergency Watch and Response Center or our mission, both of whom are the Emergency Watch and Response Center is answering calls 24/7. And that way they will get someone on the phone to help them and to help understand the context that they're in. So that would be my advice.
Okay. And I know you mentioned numbers of Canadians who have contacted you from various places. I wonder if any have sought your advice from Lebanon.
I don't have that in front of me, but we have had some calls. I would say modest amounts of calls from Lebanon. Yeah. Under 100. Yeah. I don't have that on me. They're not asking, obviously, for assistance leaving because you can fly out of Lebanon right now, but they may be asking about our concerns about the conflict. They may want to provide registration information. They may want to get broader information about the region. So it's a variety of reasons why people call. They may be calling because they want to have their travel documents updated, which is great. We're advising everybody to have their travel documents updated in that region.
Okay, that ends today's press conference. Thank you very much.